Thanks. I'd like to call the Sherborn School Committee to order at 6:35 on February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. So we'll start with community comments. Doesn't look like there's going to be any. So we'll move on to reports. The principal's report, Dr. Brown.
Good evening. I shared information in our report about the Pine Hill Peace Squad, which is part of the Roots and Wings grant that we wrote, that DSEF funded for us to work on cultural proficiency with our faculty and our students. The Peace Squad is the first tenet of that work, and as you can see, about 26 fourth and fifth graders were invited to participate in this very dynamic extracurricular program. We look forward to growing leadership skills in our students grades 4 through 12 as we perpetuate our cultural diversity and identity diversity work in our schools. I wanted to thank a heartfelt thank, pun intended, to our CSA this morning when Pine Hill faculty arrived on campus. The teacher's room had been transformed into Willy Wonkaville with lots of treats and glorious candy, so thank you. I also wanted to mention professional development focus this month for your benefit, where we have 2 early release days this month dedicated to professional development. One will be focused on the science curriculum work that we've been doing, and the other is, tomorrow actually, is geared, we'll be taking all of our educators through a simulated version of the Next Generation MCAS, which I'm sure they'll find very intriguing, and we'll be talking about the revised format for assessment. So that's our professional development focus this month. Between the snow day and Valentine's Day, our energy, I don't think, could possibly be higher among students.
Which is a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
Good. Excellent. Thank you. Mr. McCullough?
Mr. Garland, good evening all. Just wanted to briefly provide you with an update on enrollment. In your packet were materials that indicated what the February 1st enrollment was this year. And as we go through the remainder of the year, we'll update the enrollment on the 1st of every month. Enrollment actually went down by 1 student. We had a student move on from the 4th grade. The good news here, though, is at this point last year, from October 1st to February, we had seen a 3.1% increase in enrollment, or 12 additional students. The trend is not showing that to be the case this year, which is a good thing. So there's fewer disruptions in terms of new students coming in, getting acclimated to a new class, classmates getting acclimated to new peers, et cetera. But I would say that, I think we are still on target for our projected enrollments for next year. You'll recall we have both a 1-year and 3-year, 2 projections based on those 1- and 3-year rates. I think we'll be very, very close. And again, kindergarten enrollment, gave you an update last month, but we still have a few families to hear from in terms of whether they're coming or not. But, I think that projected number of 52 is still a good ballpark number for us. And that's something we'll continue to monitor as well. But enrollment looks to be, we're not experiencing that large growth every month. So that's good news. And it looks certainly that as we enter into next year, the capacity for our classrooms in terms of class size is there. And hopefully that will be our growth will be slow and steady moving forward.
Bill, a question on that? For the classroom planning, or what we're using to kind of anticipate our classroom sizes for next year, for the 1 through 5 grades, we're generally going with the 3-year projections? I'm trying to remember, we've had great
The
discussion.
one-year rate.
We're going with 1-year
We're
survival
going
rate.
with the one-year survival rates
Okay.
only because of the
Because that's such a
drastic growth
dynamic. Okay,
last
so
2 years.
we're considering at this point for 2017-18, the 1-year projection rate, kindergarten 52, 68 for first grade.
Yes.
Et cetera. Total enrollment around 420. That's what we're
Yes.
generally considering to be more accurate. Okay, as far as classroom planning. Okay, thank you. Wow,
Thanks.
big jump.
Yeah, but we'll know more as
Yep.
we move along.
Sure.
All right, thank you. Item 4 on the agenda, the monthly financial report.
So in your packet this month, you have your status of appropriations for January 31st, and you also have your first quarterly report of all your revolving and special revenue funds. On the status of appropriations, there's not a lot of new things to report, which is good. One item that came up last month was request for a little more. Move like this?
Yeah, move it closer to you.
Okay. Okay, is that, yeah. Now my heart's racing.
Please,
Back.
please continue.
So back to the requested a little more detail about the maintenance accounts, and so I sort of gave you an overview of each line item that makes up custodial services and sort of how we utilize it. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer that. We continue to have changes to out of district, and there's always a little bit of a lag, so you do have results shown in budget sense of the updates that we've given you at the last meeting. So that is now reflected in your numbers. When we get further into the fiscal year 18 budget discussion, Bill has some more updates on 17 that are not reflected in your financials at this point. And I tried to make sure that that was noted in here. On the special revenue and revolving funds, just to point out, when you take a peek at that, the building rental fund, we are now charging any custodial time for events where the building is being rented to the building rental fund. So that is being picked up now. On the cafeteria, I also gave you the monthly participation rates, so you can look and see how you're doing on a month-to-month basis, and also it compares for 3 years. But the price increase has helped continue to sort of build their fund balance, so that has been a positive outcome, because we've seen participation steady, so all that revenue is going directly into the fund balance. And the last point was the student activity fund. That audit that we've talked about is now currently underway, and Barb and Karen Gallant are working with the outside auditors on that. Once we have a report, we will bring it forward to the school committee. Any questions on any of the things presented?
Hold on just 1 second.
Okay.
Make a note here. Okay, any questions? Good Lord. Are you hungry? No questions? Wow. All right. Let's see. Go to the item 5, the capital budget.
Thank you, Greg. In your packet, we provided you with the capital items that have been requested for this year. The items on the list have not changed since you saw them last in the fall. And when you last saw the capital plan items request, last fall, there was some further work that the subcommittee needed to do involving checking in with the capital committee around previous year's balances from capital items, and they're thinking on whether in fact those funds were available for use. So since that time, subcommittee has met with the capital committee. Don has been working with town hall, and during the opportunity to meet with them, we presented all of the items. We presented the alternative approach to completing the window replacement project that we've talked about here. The capital committee responded very favorably to that approach, and we did speak to the issue of balances from previous years. So the capital committee chair was going to work with town hall. They did request copies of quotes for the capital items, so they'll be getting this same packet tomorrow that you received in your packet. So that will be the materials that they were looking for. And so what we're looking for tonight is for you to approve, hopefully, the capital plan as it's presented, with the focus being on the actual items in the plan. So that would be the exterior painting, the windows, the ceiling fans for the auditorium, and the rear projection and speakers for the auditorium as well. And what remains to be decided, and that's something that the capital committee will be continuing to discuss, and I'm sure that the advisory committee will be looking at that as well, is how this will be funded. And just a second, Greg. So the bottom line is that the funding request, if the funds that are available from previous year's capital items are applied, the additional request is the $66,000, right, Don?
Correct.
That would be what the funding would be seeking at town meeting. If for whatever reason previous year's funds are not available for use, then the town meeting request would be $204,000.
So,
That seem right, Craig?
yes, it does, but my question is in terms of timing. I thought they would have received this, like we had our meeting here. Did I drop the ball on that?
No. I was pulling it together, but since we were waiting for the MUDGE grant, which.
And we got 10 grand.
We got 10 grand, which is not reflected in these numbers.
Which is reflected.
34,
Right,
okay.
because the timing was such that, and we were waiting for another updated quote on the AV system that Mr. Rataco was working on, so the packet, the Pro AV is a different quote than we were using originally. So because of all that timing, rather than sending this to them 2 days before you guys were gonna approve it,
Okay.
we waited until you approved it and we're gonna send the whole packet to them.
So, and with regard to utilizing previous funds, I thought that was,
So we have had discussions. They originally came back to me and they weren't saying we had a whole lot of funds left because they were only looking at what had been taken out for bonds. They weren't looking at what had been appropriated. So I worked with them on that. They had now agreed that,
the treasurer?
right, well, Sharon McPherson
Okay.
and Heather.
Okay.
So my question back to them was, now that they've agreed that that was what had been appropriated, that's when I've asked them, can you work, well, are you going to allow this money to carry forward on the window project, or are you going to say that's being released back as unappropriated funds and make them request the whole amount?
Right.
They have a lot going on because they're finalizing their own,
Right, so it could be funded out of free
Finances.
cash if they wanted to spend free cash on
Yeah.
capital items. Okay.
I think the important piece for the committee to consider is are the items that are on the list. There was, at the meeting, Greg, I think there was no pushback for the request. Again, the approach to completing the window project was met very favorably.
Sure.
Thought that was a good idea. So before we go any further, and it's really, in the end, the town's decision on how projects would be, funded, where the revenue, where the funding would come from. I think at this point, it would be helpful if the committee, if you are inclined to do so, to approve the plan,
Right.
so that we can formally move that
So
on.
then they understand that there is a request for those funds.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's very clear. We've been talking about this for a number of
Right,
months.
but the only way to officially do that is we have to
Yes,
approve this plan.
yeah.
Does it make sense for us, is the sense that the whole scope would be approved as opposed to us needing to have the B and C plans just in case, or is the sense that we're good?
Yeah, I think we'll get feedback, and if necessary, it can be, if there's an issue, it can be taken up again on March 7th. It wouldn't be too late.
There hasn't been any pushback as to using previous funds. I think it's just more how it comes down. So I guess I would entertain a motion to approve the FY18 capital plan for, use a specific amount, $204,554.
Yes.
Yes, I think that would be the right
Yep.
vote.
I would entertain that motion.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. All right, 10 till 7. Is this part of the, aren't you on the wellness committee?
Challenge success.
These are whole grain? Oh.
One whole grain is
No, great, we could among it all.
Delicious. If I start eating,
Yeah, that's why I had to go away from home.
we'll be here all night.
All right, so speaking of being here all night, item 6, the FY18 operating budget discussion continued.
Thank you, Greg. So first, I apologize. In a memo that was in your packet, I had hoped that at the latest, we would have some information for you ahead of the meeting by this morning. But this budget is really a challenge for many reasons. It's been a moving target for a couple of months now. So there was some changes that were occurring that we wanted to make sure that whatever we gave you for tonight's review, that the numbers were as fresh as they possibly could be. So with that, at your table was a green folder, and there are 4 documents in there. And what I'd like to do is go through the 4 documents in the order that they are in the folder. And if you wouldn't mind being excellent students, please don't read ahead while we're going through the documents. I wanted to say that for a long time. So,
Hey, just a sec. Susan, did you get a copy of?
Yes.
The renewal punch?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. And the revised budget, can we get that to Sharon tomorrow morning? Because we're meeting tomorrow night. So George asked me to communicate that, if you guys could do that in the morning, so she can rerun
yeah,
this version into our work tomorrow night.
Good.
Please, thank you.
be happy to. So the first document is actually a regional school committee document. So it's a little unusual that we're reviewing it here, but I think it's very important for context. And at the administrative level, over the last couple of months, as we've been working on all 3 budgets, in particular, though, the Sherborn School Committee and the region budget, we've been utilizing a pre-K to 12 strategy in looking at the budgets. And by that I mean, when we review the Sherborn Advisory Committee's guidance, what was different this year than in past years, in previous years, they would provide guidance for the regional budget separately, and then guidance for the Pine Hill budget and out-of-district budget separately. This year's guidance provided one education dollar amount, if you will, for Sherborn education, And so what we've done and the way we've proceeded in looking at how we can most efficiently and effectively make use of the Sherborn educational dollars for both the elementary school and for the region, we discovered, well, we didn't discover, but in doing that and in looking at the region, there was a lot more flexibility in making adjustments to the region budget because of things like Chapter 70 and Chapter 71 aid, because of things like E&D. At the region, there are 4 teacher retirements that are happening versus, well, actually 3 retirements, and a staff member is leaving. So there's, again, a lot more flexibility, and we were really waiting for the end of January when the governor's budget came out to see what the Chapter 70, which is the state education aid, and the Chapter 71, which is regional school transportation reimbursement, what those numbers were. And equally as important, when the Chapter 70 numbers come out and they're calculated by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, the governor says there's $2.4 billion that is being set aside for Chapter 70 aid. DESE, you now, using the formula, distribute that to the different school committees. And what happens at the region level is that part of the formula, an important part of the formula is that a number called the minimum local contribution becomes part of that formula. And when the Chapter 70 amounts change, the minimum local contribution amounts change. And then there are other factors that go into determining the minimum local contribution. But what the minimum local contribution signifies, or the importance of it is, that's the number that every municipality or regional district, that's the minimum level at which they must fund education. And again, based on the formula, other attributes of the formula, the minimum local contribution then is becomes a function of how much state aid that communities receive. And in the term of regional districts like ours, the assessment, which in our case is above and beyond the state aid that we receive as a district, the assessment is based on certainly the number of students in each town that attend the region. However, for the Chapter 70 piece, the minimum local contribution determines that the other parts of the assessment. And what happened this year, which is not unusual compared to previous years, when we put our version 1 budget out, we use the fiscal year 17 final Chapter 70 number as a plug for revenue, and the minimum local contribution numbers that went along with that. So in the case of FY18, in the governor's budget, additional Chapter 78 is coming into the region to the tune of about a little more than $144,000, but also the minimum local contribution changed, shifting Sherborn's number to about $70,000 less and adjusted Dover's number up by about 50-something thousand dollars. So right away, that impacts what Sherborn's share of that version 1 budget would be if those were the only changes that were made. So in terms of the Sherborn number, that's positive news. So that can go towards reducing the budget gap at the region in terms of the advisory's guidance. So having said that, there are a number of other adjustments that actually will be proposed publicly Thursday night. This was going to be done last Thursday night, but the meeting was scheduled. But all of the materials and detail on those proposed adjustments were released, went out with the packet last week. So the material is public. Furthermore, what we wanted to do prior to that meeting, and we did this, we asked the Sherborn Advisory Committee and the Dover Warrant Committee if they would have their reps attend an informal meeting with with regional school committee reps and the administration to give them a preview of what we would be proposing at the region. Because in the end, what this document tells you is that we've been able to, our proposal on Thursday night will reduce Sherborn's assessment from $461,000 above guidance to $137,000 above guidance. And in a detail that is, it's important, but isn't reflected here, is that what typically happens is at the region, both Dover Warrant and Sherborn Advisory in past years have held the healthcare budget harmless to the guidance. And so we have projected a 15% increase in healthcare cost at the region. Sherborn's share of that increase was approximately $162,000. What we understand is that amount is really a set aside. So if the only thing that increased in the regional budget was the health insurance cost at $167, that was accounted for would have been accounted for under advisory's guidance. So we did have this informal meeting. Reps from the advisory committee and warrant were there along with the region, and this plan was met favorably. There are, again, other adjustments that were made that are being proposed for the budget. We had not yet accounted for the savings and retirements because of a deadline date in the contract. Another proposal is to prepay the last year of a 5-year bond that was taken out to pay for the middle school air conditioning. So FY18 would have been the last year of that. So that $200,000 would have been going away for FY19. We're proposing to prepay that out of E&D. So there's a number of other moving pieces, and in fact, the regional committee will take this up Thursday night, and my hope is that they will embrace that. But in the meantime, we've also, you heard us at the last meeting, we presented the plans for expanding some specialized learning programs at the region. The cost for those programs are included in this document. So any adjustments that we made, adds we made, and then our other adjustments that allowed us to reduce the assessments to both communities were then factored in. So the strategy behind this, kind of looking at the educational dollars as a pre-K-12 continuum, is based on the fact that at the elementary level, especially with the unusually high impact that the out-of-district budget is having on the elementary school budget, there is little flexibility. There is very little flexibility to make the kinds of adjustments we would need to make to get to Sherborn Advisory Committee's guidance for the Pine Hill budget, the local budget. So our strategy was to, if we could successfully make the region piece work to reduce that, then whatever education dollars are made up of the piñata would then be able to flow to the local budget. And I think that in general, that strategy works here. In addition to that, there's been some good news on the Sherborn finance side. I know that health insurance rates came in, and they came in about half what was projected, what was budgeted. So that's excellent news. Sherborn is also receiving an additional $82,000 under the governor's proposal in Chapter 70 aid. 16,000 of that was projected. The treasurer early on had projected a Chapter 70 increase of 3%, which totals about 16,000. So that means there's $65,000 of Chapter 70 revenue, again, under the governor's proposal, that will be coming in. There's also $91,000 in Norfolk County Agricultural High School assessments that are in the budget, separate and apart from the local education dollars. That was in the budget for FY17. Currently, there are no Sherborn students attending Norfolk Aggie, so that line item is not even being utilized this year. And
From Sherborn?
not according to the information we just got from Norfolk Aggie. We just got a list of students. There are 2 students attending from the region, but they're both from Dover, unless one of them recently moved. But anyway, the bottom line is that the application deadline for next year is March 1st, and it appears that there'll be no new applications that we're aware of. So the point is that there's a portion of those funds, if not all, that, in my opinion, should be their education dollars. They should go to the local budget if it's not being used. And we've talked to advisory about that, and I think there's at least some members certainly would agree with that. And then there are other things going on that I hopefully will learn at tomorrow night's meeting with the advisory committee that are positive in terms of the financial picture. So that's the strategy that the administration is utilizing and has gone forward with. And based on, again, the feedback we received last week at our informal meeting, there seemed to be, at least for those who attended that meeting, some very positive responses to that plan. So hopefully, we'll know more as we, again, have our meeting with them tomorrow night.
Okay. You okay to take a few questions on this page?
Sure. No, we can. I mean,
Yeah. Well,
It's actually specific to this. I'm just wondering, I appreciate that, there's one pot of money coming from Sherborn, and I appreciate that the education dollars are the education dollars. But I wonder a little bit about looking at us at pre-K through 12, since we are separate districts. Does that potentially, or could that potentially cause some issues or complications? is there a way that we could view it, like, think about it that way, but even when we discuss the funding, it's not that, it's like we're taking money from the region is giving us money, is it, sort of think of it as more, that they're not using it, it's education dollars, therefore we can use it. I just wonder with the weird distinct districts where they have different rules.
No,
So-
I think we all get that.
Can
We
I
certainly understand
can I
that.
address it?
Sure.
I think it's more of how advisory looks at it.
Yeah, it's
Because-
Sherborn dollars going.
Because
Yeah, but like the district though, if at the region, if they, for instance, have a shortfall in the middle of the year, they can't go back to the town, right? That's why they have E&D, and I get that, but that it runs differently. It doesn't. I know that it's one pot of money, and I get that we've been saying the dollar should follow the students. We've been saying that for several years, and I agree with that. I'm just wondering how we're positioning it could be potentially tricky or a slippery slope. I'm not saying it is, I'm just wondering, because I know that it's complicated, the whole region.
So the reason I'm going through this is that when we get to the next document, you'll see that our budget gap now with some adjustments is about $430,000 above advisory's guidance. And all of the information, the data that we've seen from advisory was suggesting that, there's no way that a $400 and something thousand increase at the local level and a $380,000 increase at the regional level, again, apart from health insurance, was sustainable. And so I don't, the approach that we're taking is we're not commingling dollars, we're not taking money from Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. What we're doing is going through what I believe is our fiduciary responsibility with the town of Sherborn to create a regional budget, for example, that is truly reflective of what the committee believes its educational needs for FY18 are. And so the adjustments that are going to be proposed at the region level meet all of those requirements. We're not reducing level of services, we're actually creating programs and increasing services. We're taking advantage of what appears to be some positive financial news for the district. Now, some might argue that, well, you can't necessarily depend on that 144,000 additional Chapter 70 because the legislature, there's two more budgets to come out, the House and the Senate. They may change it, but the fact of the matter is, over the last 7 years, the governor's budget number has been either the same or exceeded in 5 of those 7 years. So the good bet is that money is going to be there. But the bottom line is, we're making the adjustments at the region that is responsible, and we should be making and would be making regardless of what the Sherborn budget, happened to be at. It just so is this year that the ask at the region in terms of Sherborn's assessment, based on the proposals again that will be made Thursday night, does not require a large additional sum of money over what was funded last year. So naturally, what that means is there's money available under that scenario to fund, I hope, to fund the biennial budget. And so we're still being responsible and meeting our responsibilities from an administrative level in presenting budgets and making proposals for adjustments that, that again, we believe will meet the needs for our kids in FY18. And it just so happens in this year that, that, you know, the local ask will be much greater than what the ask needs to be at the region. And it appears, when we look at the data and the numbers that advisory has provided us, that it's a doable situation without having to slash services at the local level.
Right, and I just want to make clear, I wasn't questioning any of the numbers that you were giving us or any of that. I was purely thinking from it, really from almost like a semantic perspective, just making sure that it's...
They're separate budgets, there's no doubt about it.
Separate, and it's
Absolutely.
it's completely separate.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks, appreciate it.
So, so my concern would be pushback, and that's, you're presenting this on Thursday?
Yeah, so there are no guarantees.
Right, so, since I don't understand a lot of this, I think the use of E&D, and we talked about it a little bit, that's something that people, I assume, would sort of push back on. Can you talk about what that's used for, or the use of E&D, or that's immaterial? In other words, if anybody's going to push back on anything, I would assume it's using E&D.
Yeah, so just very quickly, the history of at the region in creating their budgets, they have historically used a large amount from E&D to what I would call supplement the budget. Last year was $250,000, but in previous years it was $500,000, $750,000, etc. As we went through the process last year, it was my observation that I thought it was unusual that E&D should be used to supplement the budget, that the budget should be built on the member assessments, and that excess and deficiency is really a regional system's free cash, similar to the municipality, and that E&D should be used for specific one-time purposes. And it is the region's reserve account in case there is something that happens in the middle of a budget year. The state stops reimbursing for, transportation because of state budget cuts, or, all three boilers at the high school go out at the same time, and it costs $60,000 to replace them. What was happening in the past was that, and these are my words, my observation, budgets were being built artificially because if you were using $500,000 from E&D, and the goal was to keep E&D at a certain level, which can be no more than 5% of the previous year's operating, of the current year's, well, the previous year's operating budget, then budgets were being built to try and recapture the amount of money that was being used from E&D. So the plan going forward, and was talked about last year, was to try to wean the regional budget process off of use of E&D. The number that is on this page actually represents what is a projected surplus at the end of the year at the region for this year due to an increase in the Chapter 70 funding based on the final budget. So last year, we used the governor's Chapter 70 number for the region. The final budget actually increased the region's Chapter 70 aid by $137,290. So that money, theoretically, at the end of the year, will have flown into E&D. So what we're proposing is, it'll flow into E&D, but then be taken back out to again, supplement the budget. So that's what that essentially means.
All right.
But again, this is for context. So the next document represents our suggested adjustments to the Pine Hill budget, to the Sherborn School Committee's budget, making it a so-called version 3. So at the last meeting on January 17th, the first page of this document is really a recap of what you saw at the last meeting. There were some adjustments that we proposed, and they're listed on that sheet. I'm not going to go back through them again. You can look at that. But in the end, the version 2, there was a net change of approximately $50,000. We revised the in-district budget to represent a decrease of $61,000, and we had to make some adds to the out-of-district budget, total of $45,000. So the net change was actually a decrease of about $16,000. We had a budget gap at that point of $286. Version 2 brought that down to a budget gap between what we are proposing and advisory's guidance of $270,000. Everybody follow that? So that was the result of the last meeting.
Right, so this is, page 1 is nothing new. You've already seen on that.
Yep. So the adjustments we're proposing for tonight are on page 2 of this document. So the first adjustment would be to the in-district part of the budget. And we're proposing that the salary line can be decreased by that $23,000. And that would be the result of that would be the salary impact on the reorganization of the BA position that we talked about the last meeting. So we'd be taking the pieces from Sherborn and Dover and realigning that position to be a district-wide position. The net result for Sherborn would be we're going from a 0.4 to a 0.3 FTE, but there'll be a savings of $23,000. And then the other adjustments are related to the out-of-district budget. There have been some new placements at the region level and some changes since January 17th. The net increase is $133,043, and I'll go over those specifics with you in the next document, because we've provided you with the revised FY 18 out-of-district projection for that line. So, and that additional 133 is being offset a little bit by a decrease in transportation of $11,000. That goes along with, we're able to do that because of one of the placement changes. The transportation will no longer be required. So the revised out-of-district budget now sits at combined tuition and transportation at $1,070,000 versus the $903,000 that was proposed in the original version 1 budget. So as a result of those in and outs to the budget, so to speak, the proposed budget now stands at $6,858,349. That's a $369,000 increase over last year. And, basically $369,000 above advisory's guidance. Just remember, advisory's guidance was level funding. So in order to see where some of those changes, those out-of-district changes have occurred, in your packet is an updated, as of February 14th, projected FY 2018 out-of-district budget. So that's the spreadsheet that has the heading in a green color. Everybody see that? So at the top, it says Sherborn Public Schools projected FY 2018 out-of-district budget, updated February 14th, 2017. So the changes that have been made since last month are highlighted in yellow for you. And the other change in this document, which is a little different than the document you've received previously, is that in the previous documents, we would list in the tuition columns what the projected FY18 actual tuition was going to be. So in the first line, for example, or line 2, because there's just it doesn't include extended year or related services, the 52,400, we calculated the 60% reimbursement in previous documents of the 52.4, so the total column would have been around $48,000. What this version is doing is we're carrying the full amount to the total column and adding up the actual full dollars. And you'll see on the second page, we then account from the total, we account for the 60% reimbursement and reduce that total amount by the anticipated 60% reimbursement. Just in case you have a photographic memory and we're remembering what the January 17th document looked like, you would have seen that the last column to the right, the totals were a little different. So you could just go down and you can see that there were some changes made. Line number 8, that's an add since January. Line number 10 is a change in placement, and that's reflected. And then line number 13, you'll see that the tuition amount is $300,000. That's still an estimate right now. We believe that's about where it will end. But that's a change in placement from a day placement to a residential placement. We believe that will take effect around March 1st. And what was budgeted in total last month was approximately $117,000. So that's a big change. And that is what's driving that large increase over last month in the out-of-district budget. And if you follow that to the next page, you'll see that the top box represents what the dollar amounts were in version 1, just for tuition. Transportation isn't included in these boxes. And the version 3 updated projected tuition expenses are in the second box, the box below. So if you follow that from version 1 to version 3, version 1 assumed 60% circuit breaker, so that was already calculated in. Version 3, though, the actual tuitions that we project between the elementary and region is the 1.175 million. And then we actually have a worksheet where we take each individual student from FY17 and we take their total tuition and other cost-related services and extended school year, plug that into the worksheet, and it will compute for us an estimated circuit breaker reimbursement. So that's where the $241,879 comes from.
But for next year, though, you don't get full circuit breaker on the 300,000, right?
Not full on the 300,000, but
The component that applies to this year.
right. So when we prorate the day cost up through the end of February for that individual, and then the residential cost for the last 4 months of the fiscal year, the total yearly cost for that student is about $160-something thousand, up from 117. So the 60% reimbursement applies to that difference between 160 and 117 fully. And that's about $36,000. So it's not really, the additional $200,000 doesn't necessarily net out to 200. It nets out after the additional reimbursement money to something a little less than that, so, but,
So the difference, so the big difference was 200,000 additional, right?
plus
So-
some other
So
minor
there's more
placement changes.
addition. So the changes on this document that says new regional placements and changes since January 17 is 133,043.
Right,
It seems like it'd be way more than that.
so,
What am I missing?
so you have to factor in, and help me out, Don. So the net change in the tuition total is, between version 1 and version 3, is $218,000. But we've had adjustments in transportation of about 53,000.
3,000.
And then when you take into account the additional circuit breaker, so the dollars tie back.
Okay. This,
We've gone over these numbers,
We had the same question.
and over these numbers,
and
yeah, we
proved it
did,
out. Yeah,
yeah.
really.
okay, so not to complicate it, but back to your report, additional money that we need for this year.
Right.
Right. So if you go, right, so that leads to the last document
Okay.
in your packet, and that's the updated.
Can I just say, from an accounting perspective, we made some changes right before we came here, but just, can you pencil in, the net changes of February 14 is not 82,791, it's 98,887. Just when you go home tonight, and you're in bed reading this, I don't want you to think that we didn't catch it.
98,000.
It should be 98,887. Yeah, see that.
So the last document is the updated FY17 OOD enrollment. And in the top left-hand corner, highlighted in green, you'll see today's date, 2/14. So again, the data, the information that's highlighted, those are changes that have occurred for FY17 since last meeting. And if you follow that to the next page, you go to the tuition summary. So again, we just, you've seen these boxes 2 or 3 times before, at least, this report. This is just an updated version. So when we take into account what was budgeted for out-of-district tuition, the circuit breaker reimbursement that we know we're receiving this year, the state has already told us. Now, remember, we budgeted 60%, but we'll actually be receiving 70%, and we're assuming, given the shortfall, that we'll be putting all 70% towards the cost. So that's the 281, and then we have the tuition revolving fund of 50. So the dollars available for out-of-district tuition spending is $958. Our current expenses after these adjustments are the $1,108,000. So the current shortfall now is $149,256.
The 50, so the proposed tuition revolving fund, taking 50,876 out of, and we have to ask for that at town meeting?
No, that's the fund you set up back in the fall, It's the tuition dollars coming in from Dover for the students who are taking
okay,
it.
I'm sorry.
So right now, the shortfall is 149,256. We're hoping that a portion of that can be accounted for with whatever kind of surplus we end up with in the budget year. We have a warrant article for the upcoming town meeting to ask for funds from the Special Education Stabilization Fund, which is, this is the exact example of why that fund was set up. We're hoping that we don't have to use it, that we can meet this shortfall in other ways, either through the operating budget. We've inquired of the advisory committee what the status of their reserve account for FY17 is. So there was money, there's money in the advisory committee's reserve account. What we understand is there's a form that we need to fill out, which we will be doing, and submit it to the advisory committee. And so some of the shortfall hopefully will be funded through some monies available in the reserve account. And then we know there's $16,000 remaining from last year's circuit breaker reimbursement in the circuit breaker revolving fund that is available for use. So we would apply that to this. So, I think as we go through the next 2 months, we're carefully watching the bottom line of the FY17 budget. We have already projected that we believe there'll be $30,000 in the salary accounts available. So certainly that would go towards this shortfall. So we're keeping on top of that. As we get into the 1st of April or so, we'll have a better sense, clearly a better sense with 2 months left to go in the budget year, how much of this the operating budget will be able to absorb, and then hopefully we'll have an answer or have a sense of whether the reserve account can fund some of it. We have that 16,000, and then we'll have to start thinking about what the request would be at town meeting. So that there isn't a dollar amount yet in that article. That's something that would come up as we approach town meeting.
On the agenda for the operating budget, it's got AR. We don't, do we have to
No.
vote this? We don't need to vote this.
No, so
It's
you...
going to change
It's going to change, and you will take your formal action
March 7th.
March 7th.
Any,
But what I would, you're just getting this tonight, and I've talked a lot. So what I would ask is, when you get a chance to go through the documents you received tonight in more detail, don't hesitate to send any questions. Greg, do you want them to come through you?
sure.
And because we really would welcome that. And, if there's something you're seeing that isn't making sense, please ask us about it, because, sometimes by asking these questions and bringing or making observations, it helps us in terms of making sure that, our numbers are right, which we believe they are, but, so don't hesitate to do that.
Yes, I would encourage people to send questions to me, and I can forward them on. Any questions on what was presented?
For the projected fiscal year 2018 district budget, where we have the $300,000 add for the number 13 line item, that's Sherborn's share of the cost, right? So there's there's more costs associated with this placement that is paid at, or that's at the region level too?
No.
It's Sherborne's.
All
No.
6.
Is this, how many years will this remain as a, so we're just looking right now, I see two things, or I see certainly our immediate need is we need to get fiscal year 18 budget together and set. But as I'm looking at some of these big numbers that have changed and whatnot, is that going to carry into fiscal year 19? Is that, what's the duration?
Yep.
You know, so it's, and then probably some of the questions I'm going to feed through Greg are going to be more along those lines too. It's, we have expenses we're trying to cover this year, or cover for fiscal year 18, but, you know, what's it going to look like? What's our crystal ball say for 19, 20,
Yeah.
going out a little bit?
That's a good question, and it's something that we talked with advisory about. We actually had this conversation at the informal meeting we had with them. I wanted advisory to, I suggested that they look at this one change in particular because of the magnitude of the change a little differently than perhaps some of these other changes, which, because in effect, in this particular case, there will be an FY18 impact, 19, and 20, 3 budget year impacts. But, and what happens is that the major impact is on FY18, and because circuit breaker reimbursement lags a year, the circuit breaker amount for that one particular situation will increase dramatically for FY19, and then in FY20, and then the full amount of circuit breaker will come back to the district also in FY21, a year when that $300,000 tuition actually goes away.
Right.
So one way to look at it is, without impacting other services to the budget, if there's a way to account for this in FY18, the differences in 19 and 20 can be recovered through
Right.
circuit breaker reimbursement, and then theoretically,
Yeah,
you know, the FY21 budget,
replenishes. Okay.
that kind of one-time contribution, if you will.
Okay.
Hey, Bill, I have one question, if I may. Why don't they move up to the region as they start to age out of the individual districts? Why don't they move up to the regional budget?
In terms of the budgeting,
Yeah,
so that's part of the regional agreement. It's
Each
in the
town-
regional
each
agreement
town
that
covers their-
each town covers the cost of those costs pre-K through age 22 in the local budget.
It's just, if it wasn't like that, Dover had a particularly bad experience, I guess, 2 years ago or something like that. It would have been a massive hit, wouldn't it, to
You shared the
Right,
cost.
yeah.
we would have shared.
Yeah.
It would have
This
been
way you take care of,
brutal.
Take care
if
of
it's a
your
Sherborn
own.
resident, Sherborn takes care of it. If it's Dover, Dover takes care of it.
All right, any other questions for now, just in terms of clarification for looking through this on your own?
I have just a really quick clarification. So if the transportation changes for the placement we were just speaking of, is that reflected in what we're getting?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and the format for the meeting tomorrow night is what? Is there a time frame for everybody to
Yes.
come?
Everybody has an allotted time frame, I think.
We're scheduled from 7 to 8:15.
7 to 8:15?
Yes, that's what the email I received said.
You know, I just had it a second ago, I'll confirm.
An hour and 15 minutes?
We're first on the agenda, Susan, right? That's my understanding,
I believe so.
unless it has changed.
Sherborn Schools was, last I was told, but this is February 2nd, was 7 to 7:45. Planning's at 7:45.
Oh, so 45
Okay.
minutes.
We can do that.
Gee,
Okay. So we're going to do
reduce
that.
our packet by 12 pages.
Well, you got the region, you got to find the land.
No, it's just Pine Hill tomorrow.
Region
Okay.
region is 3-1.
Right,
Yeah.
the joint.
Oh, maybe the region is the hour 15.
That's,
Is it what you have
That
for
might
that?
be because there's like one before you and.
Okay.
Yeah, the region's
All right.
rest of
that's a
it.
45 is better than an hour and
perfect place
15.
for it.
Thank you
All
for
right,
clarifying.
so moving on to item 7, the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. A second? Any questions? That's the minutes. Everybody good with that? No changes? All right, those in favor? Those in favor? Those opposed? No? Okay, that's done. Item 8, for your reading pleasure. Number 9, so we'll see you all tomorrow at 7. And then
Greg, can I just, Ian, can you help me remember, so, certainly the chair attends that meeting, and all other members are welcome. It's not an official school committee meeting, it's the advisory committee's meeting, so it's not posted, but certainly all members are welcome to attend that.
You just can't talk to each other.
I'm expecting no one's going to show up.
But you can bring these and share them.
So, for future meetings, we got that. Do you want to just type up what you want, or what you'd like to see, or you want to mention it to maybe Barbara and Bill, and an item that we'd like to see on the agenda? We don't want to push the budget around, but we don't want to let it, we don't want to let it go.
A future agenda item, it doesn't have to necessarily be the next meeting if we're going to be mostly focused on the budget. But it was brought to my attention a program about school safety and questions about how we keep up to date with our protocol around school safety. I know that the police are involved in that, and Barbara goes to the safety, there's a subcommittee meeting that you attend, is that correct?
Safety committee.
Are you talking about our emergency planning?
Yes, yes. So just to kind of somewhere in a future agenda, discuss what we can. I don't know how much can be public knowledge. I know there's some things that aren't, but discuss how you come up with what we do and how the training happens and how we stay on top of what the latest.
So we know that we're.
No,
doing that.
actually, it's very timely. At the leadership team meeting tomorrow, we're going to be talking about a training that is being offered free of charge to all Norfolk County school districts through a grant on emergency planning. So it's a good opportunity for representative staff from both the region, Dover and Sherborn, to come together and participate in this training. It's taking place March 1st and 2nd. So I anticipate that we will have a team there. So we'll put it on a future agenda, perhaps that the April joint meeting actually might be a good agenda item, because it would apply to all 3 districts.
All right, anything else? Entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay. Second? Okay. Everybody's in favor of that?
Yep.